I have two quick questions. You mentioned sprouting. My first question, can you sprout nuts that come in pieces? For example, walnuts usually come in pieces and not a whole. And my second question regarding the food combination that you mentioned, is it every group needs to be eaten by itself, or you can combine, for example, salad with legumes and grains, or you would recommend to eat the salad alone, wait 2 hours, and then eat the grain, and then wait, and then eat the legume, etc.
Well,
Thank you.
Sart, that's an excellent question, and I neglected to articulate that broad enough. So vegetables and sprouts go with either proteins or carbs. So in either case, you basically can eat salads and greens and sprouts and microgreens with them. In fact, the only thing you have to consider is, when am I going to eat a protein meal and when am I going to eat a starchy carbohydrate meal? Now, if you really think about it, you want to eat your protein meal in the middle of the day. So your nuts, your seeds, your nut loaf, your nut burger, your sauces, etc. Because now you have 4 hours to digest it. If you're like me, many times I'll be eating at 7:30 at night and I'm going to bed at 9:30. You don't want to have food from protein that's not digested. So ideally, protein meals in the middle of the day, starchy carbs that only take a couple of hours to digest, better in the evening. So excellent question. The first one is germinating, sprouting. This is the natural occurring process that all plants go through. So you buy organic seeds, no matter what a seed is, it all sprouts if it's live. If they haven't cooked it, they haven't radiated, they haven't processed, every single seed, nut, grain, and bean can be sprouted. And if you can't sprout them, you shouldn't eat them. That means they're dead. So a lot of light leafy green sprouts like alfalfa, clover, onions, radish, you can stick in a jar, put some water in, let it soak for 6-8 hours, put a screen on the top with a rubber band, take the water that was soaking on your house plant or on a tree outside. They love it because the enzyme inhibitors are there. Gundry is talking about how bad that is. Well, that's not bad. It's protecting the plant. Basically, you put that out, they love it. And by the way, you then rinse them once or twice a day. Humid climates twice a day, non-humid climates once a day. And in about 5-6 days, that whole jar is filled with the most edible medicinal plants that you can imagine you can grow in the middle of a snowstorm in the winter in Alaska. So that's it. Now, other ones like sunflower greens or the microgreens, you take the seeds, soak them in the same way. You then put them on soil. You can buy serving trays and put them there. And they grow in 5, 6, 8 days. And now you have these incredible powerhouses of nutrition you can survive on. You can live on these things. And then other ones take, lentils take 3 days. But lentils are the highest iron source on the planet Earth. So when people have low iron counts, because generally they've been lacking B12, not because they're vegans, because they're eating the way the Americans do and Western people do. Basically, they start taking that and we see a major difference. Of course, we give them supplemental B12 too, to make sure they don't have a reoccurrence of that. So excellent 2 questions.
Thanks very much for that, Brian. And let's now go to Lorraine. Welcome, Lorraine.
Hi. Oh, you are a wealth of information. Thank you so much. I'm 81 years old. I have eaten ice cream most of my life. Needless to say, my LDL was 288 4 months ago. I'm going to be tested next month. I've lost 30 pounds. I'm on strict whole food plant-based diet, no exceptions. However, my question to you is, how much fat should I allow into my diet? I have been very diligent, like 1 tablespoon of flax, 1 tablespoon of chia, no avocados, no other nuts. What would you suggest? No oils, no salt, no sugar.
Okay. Well,
I am so proud after a lifetime of eating junk. Well, and I'm looking good.
Well, let me tell you, love, I'm just so happy when people are transparent and candid like that. That was my biggest fix. I always said it was one-stop shopping. I got sugar and I got fat and I ate a lot of it. I mean, that was the hardest thing for me to give up. Even though I liked meat when I gave it up 52 years ago, I liked ice cream a lot more. And at the beginning, by the way, the farm made the very first vegan ice cream out of soy, which wasn't that great. But I remember I got hooked on that for a period of time. Don't get hooked on it. You don't need any of it. So you are absolutely correct, especially as we're aging, and forget just as we're aging. Throughout your life, you need essential fatty acids. And by taking sprouted flax seeds, taking chia seeds that are sprouted, and you can either sprout these yourself, you can buy them sprouted and then re-dried. And for instance, today before I came to speak to all of you around the world, I ate a salad that had about 21 different greens in it, of which 7 of them were sprouts. Arugula was in there, I mentioned. And by the way, I put 6 different seeds on that. That's what I do with my salad every single day. I have all the essential fats so that my memory does not go bad. If you look at long-term people in this field, not the newbies who've been around 20, 30 years, but people like Hippocrates, Dr. Furman, who grew up eating this way, we all know that one of the problems that we have is a lot of people don't take any essential fats. And when you don't take essential fats, your brain starts to go south. And I'm going to tell you, that's not a good thing for you.
Thanks very much for that, Brian. And up next, we have Gail. Welcome, Gail.
Hi, thanks so much, Brian. I just was wondering if you could clarify about sprouting beans. I asked a question of your wife the other day, but I just wanted to be clear that if you sprout any kind of bean, you don't have to cook it at all. Is that?
No, not at all. I mean, I know there's some debate about kidney beans because a lot of our intellectual friends get, intellectual, unfortunately. But I've never found a sprouted kidney bean, but avoid that for the sake of that discussion. But there's no other bean. I mean, I'm not a big fan of soybeans because they're a little difficult to digest even when they're germinated, but every other bean's amazing for you. I mean, chickpeas are a bean. We call them a pea. They're 25% protein. Red meat, if you were silly enough to eat it and slaughter the animal and drink the blood out of its neck, is only 19% protein. When you cook it, it's not a complete protein. So that's how important these things are. Now, when I began all of this, Diet for a Small Planet was the big biblical book at that point. And back then, we didn't know it nearly what we should have known. And we used to tell people you have to take beans and rice together to get the. I'm going to tell you, I could sit here for the next 2 hours and give you one type of food that has complete protein in it and not stop for 2 hours. We just said the little lowly sesame seed. Why in the Middle East they say open sesame? When I was over there many, many decades ago, I said, why? They said that saved our life. They didn't know it was a protein. They didn't know it was a calcium then. Now, again, it wasn't long-term survival, but the fact was they weren't dying of protein starvation. So a lot of foods have complete proteins in them. And beans are great, but you don't need them so much for that. You need them for that roughage. Remember I said, when you take a sprouted bean, you take a sprouted nut, you take a sprouted seed, they stay within the intestinal tract with that fibrous cellulose, with those phytochemicals, with the phenols, and all of the things that are going to be medicinal for your body and actually give incredible messaging to the brain and to the immune system. You want them to be in there for longer than a salad would be. You need salad for a different reason. Salad comes in and stimulates and basically gets circulation and brings more hydration into the body and actually brings more hormones in. There's more hormones in fresh, raw, sprouted greens than there are anything else. And when you put more hormones in, the language becomes much clearer for every cell in the human body.
Thank you for that, Brian. And now we're going to go to Benny. Welcome, Benny.
Brian, even if we eat healthy, should we take supplements, and what do you recommend on that?
I take a lot of supplements because I'm having fun. Now, I also do a highly sophisticated test here for the guests. I take it once a year. And I haven't had a real deficiency of any type, Anna Marie or I, or obviously our children, in decades. But I still take a lot of supplements. You don't have to wait till you're deficient. This is the unfortunate mentality we have in our culture today. When something goes wrong, then we act. Let's act before something goes wrong. So when I start my day sometimes at 4 a.m, and I was asked, how do I do all of this? This in part is why I eat this way. I exercise consistently. I lift weight. I do aerobic exercise. I stretch. I have a loving relationship with my wife. I love what I do. This doesn't even work for me. But most important, I fuel myself nutritionally, not only with this powerhouse food, the superior food, but superior supplementation, raw, uncooked, plant-based supplements. I wrote the book on this. Read it. Supplements Exposed. It wasn't popular in health stores, but the reality is, when you take the right supplements, it's going to give you that edge. It's going to give you, so if I'm working till 10 o'clock lecturing somewhere, I'm not going to be off. I'm going to be on my A game at 10 o'clock at night, even though I woke up at 6 o'clock that morning and I've been working all day long. Because if you love life, if you're fueled, if your psychology is being actually regulated by these things we talked about today, you are optimistic, you're happy, and you're energized.
Thank you very much. Folks, when he says he wrote the book on it. Yes, thank you very much. Up next, we have Gary. Gary, right ahead. Go right ahead.
Hi, Brian. This is Gary and Denise, actually from Connecticut. I just have a question on the underestimated choline and its importance on the vegan diet, as well as the dosage for a toddler.
Well, you have to understand, if you're giving your child the original life form, the algae, it is riddled with choline. Now, one of the safest things, especially if economics are a concern to any of them listening out there today, if you take no other supplement, there's two that you should consider. A living food form of bacterial B12, like the Life Give form we create. That's actually, if you took a microscope, it's doing this. When you look at it, it's alive. Other ones are dead and chemicalized and not really working. And the second one is algae. If you only took one algae, it's blue-green algae, the original life form that created life. That has choline in it. Now, I choose to take 5 of those a day. Now, remember, I buy these things wholesale too. So I take blue-green algae, I take chlorella, which is green algae, I take phytoplankton, which is grown in Holland. The Dutch government funded a 9 billion euro plant. It's so amazing. I take sea algae in a liquid form, and I take a product that we create called super greens. It has algae and other greens in it. Now, why I do that is that these are so much better than multiple vitamins. It's not even worth talking about. Even the good multiple vitamins, they're fractionally as good as this. The other thing I can say with plants, as much as I'm a doctor of nutrition and I've studied this my whole life and it sounds impressive, we're still learning. We haven't learned everything that's in a plant. And the fact of the matter is, if I'm taking a whole plant supplement or a whole plant-based diet, it may take us 100 years more. I may be gone before we find out there's this and that in it that's actually more important than what we thought was in it. But when you mess with things, you isolate things, you play with things, or you do what those doctors did. Oh, if you're a vegan, you don't get choline. If you take the right vegan foods, you get choline. By the way, plant-based raw vegans have the least B12 deficiency of any of us. That's the work of Dr. Fontaine at Washington University in St. Louis. You know, he was stunned to find out vegans still have a problem, not as bad as meat eaters though. I'm on my 35th year this year of studying B12 deficiencies. And I can tell you something, the ones who have the most are meat, dairy, fish eaters, chicken eaters. They have about an 8% higher than cooked vegans, because cooked vegans at least get some cellulose activity to get that probiotic going. Remember, B12 is not a B vitamin. It's a probiotic. It's a soil-based microorganism. Now go back to what I said during this presentation. Why do the Mexicans have 10% of the problem that the sterile Finnish people have? Why do the Pakistanis have 1/4 of the problems the Mexicans have? They're close to the soil. They're getting the microorganisms. They're getting the bacteria. They're eating food with that in it. You and I think everything has to be sterilized. And that's why we have a sterile brain and a sterile body, and we're sick as a dog today.
Thanks very much, Brian. And up next, we're going to bring in Kurt. Kurt, welcome.
Oh, Brian, have you had any or discuss any possible success you've had in dealing with ankylosing spondylitis?
Oh, sure. You know, we're not only at a nutritional institute. You know, this is a place that we're comprehensive. That's why people come here from all over the world. We have people here from 8 countries as we sit today and speak. That's the campus behind us. And the reality is we have state-of-the-art NUCA doctors, state-of-the-art structural doctors, state-of-the-art medical doctors, electromagnetic energy, cold laser energy. So the spondylosis is not going to get well alone with just a good diet. Anyone that tells you that is not telling you the truth or inexperienced, let's put it that way. So you need a combination of building up the nutritional factor and the fascia, the tissue. And we have a physical therapist that helps to do that here, and a woman who's a genius with stretching. She used to work with the NFL football teams. And, you know, when you start to do that and you allow the muscular structure and the fascia, the tissue, to go back to normality, we get circulatory blood flow through, and we start to get some of these nutrient factors in. And then we do structural work on you, not jolting the back or doing things that can happen and can hurt you sometimes, by the way. You see remarkable things. I mean, the center my wife directed, Anna Maria, in Sweden, even though it was greatly nutrition, they were actually showing results. At that center in Stockholm, they actually had the government come in and spend $2.5 million back 40 years ago in doing research. And this was one of the disorders they actually said it helped, because when you get into that positioning, you get an inflammatory problem. And just by diet alone, the inflammation goes down, allowing a relaxation in the structural problem and a slowdown of the degradation. Let's remember this, that every single animal product in the world, I don't care if it's organic kefir, I don't care if it's organic yogurt, it has 3 acids in it. And those acids eat away at tissue. They degrade the tissue, and bone is tissue. If you see a meat eater, by the way, they have pits in their bones. Why in the countries that have arthritis do they have arthritis? Look at their diets. You know, it's not that it's damp in those countries, it's that they have these erosive acids within the animal-based foods. And by the way, some of the unripened fruits that you eat have erosive effects too, just not as aggressive as animal food consumption. So you've got a lot of things to think about, but we've worked with God knows how many hundreds of people with this, with great success, if you follow through. You know, this is not the typical healthcare system, be it allopathic or be it holistic. The difference here is we tell you that we'll help you, we'll support you, we'll treat you, but by the way, you do it. We can't heal you. One thing I have never done with any guest since 1975 when I joined the team here, and 1980 when I became director, I've never gone home with a guest and done this for them. And I don't plan on doing it. It's a full-time job doing it myself. So if you're ready and willing to come here and do what we say, come along, we invite you.
Brian, thanks very much. We are coming to a close very soon, but I'm going to go to Stacy real quick. Stacy, if you can give us your question.
Hi there. Thank you so much for your work. I have a friend who has stage 4 BRAF metastatic melanoma. Would you suggest absolutely no fruit?
Absolutely. We took fruit over 40 years ago out of the diet of anyone that has cancer. And after we did that, immediately we saw success. And by the way, today, the greatest doctors, some of them have been on The Real Truth About Health, will concur with me. These are the top premier research scientists in the history of cancer. They agree with us. And I can tell you something, anyone that would fight you on that one, it's a disservice to the human race, and it's a disservice to healthcare, because we have seen the results in 4 decades here.